Good morning. I think I'm here. Where am I? There I am. Hello and welcome. It is How-To Diorama with me, Bill. And today we're going to look at my D&D diorama, but I got some folks online I want to say hello to. So Martin is here, and we're going to look at some pictures from Martin a little bit later on. Martin, cheers from Holland. Hi, Bill. I'll be airbrushing while listening for a while. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So no response in the chat for me. Oh, geez. Sorry, Martin. I was just really busy. It's funny. I have like members on my YouTube channel, and what they do is they get like the videos before they're posted to go live. And you post it, and then they get to see it first, and then it goes live late, maybe a day later, something like that. Lots of times for my shorts, it's like 5 minutes early. So like I am sometimes just like behind my camera doing this, like right up until the point that I post. So sorry, but thanks very much. Hey, Scott is here. Hello, Scott. How's it going? Howdy, everyone. Hope all is well. I hope everybody is well. Last week, I think Martin mentioned the folks down in North Carolina, and because of Hannah, the hurricane that went through, I'm just totally oblivious. We don't have like regular cable TV. I just have like internet and stuff like that. And so I hadn't been paying attention to the news. And oh my gosh. So thanks very much for, mentioning that, Martin. And I hope everyone is well, especially in the south east of the United States and anywhere in the world where these crazy storms are happening right now. Boy, I hope everybody's safe. Homefront Forge is here. Daniel's here. Hello. Thanks very much for coming in. John is here. Hello, John. Thanks very much for coming in. I think this is going to be pretty fun because later on today, let me see if I've got the right thing on the screen over here. Later on today, pardon me, I'm going to show how to paint the little medieval deal there. Hold on. I'm trying to there we go. I'm going to be showing how to paint these medieval sewers. And it was really fun. It was something that, I'd kind of done a little bit of work on it just to see what it was going to look like, because I didn't want this medieval sewer. Let me see if I can go to a picture of it real quick here. That's a little bit better picture. It's going to be way down here. Here it is. So here's the medieval sewers that I'm working on. And this is just the plastic or the foam, the pink foam, where I've, done I used a stamp. I've got these little brass stamps that I made that work really cool for making cobbles and making, just a bunch of these stones. So this was all done by little DIY stamps that I made out of brass tubing. And after that was done, I put like your wall plaster stuff. It's like spackle. If you have a hole in your wall, I put that on it. It goes on pink. It dries white. And that's what's filling in the centers, between all of the detail in there. And so, this is like a storm and wastewater runoff is, I think, the best way to kind of view it. And I think my job was to make it look not like when it's full of water. And I had some great comments of folks about how to simulate water and, pouring resin, which I may be pouring resin in this. But anytime I've seen like online or something like that, somebody in a sewer system, you've got this huge big pipe, and then you got this little tiny rivulet of water kind of meandering down it. And if it's flat, it's kind of meandering. And I like that because I think, number one, it will allow for a lot of just stuff, to kind of build up in little areas. And I can have this little meandering stream going down the center, of these relatively wide sewer troughs, I guess they're called. And so that is kind of how I started looking at this. That's really what I wanted to kind of accomplish, is not just having them full of water like it's a creek or a river or something like that, but to just show that, you're down in a stinky runoff, and there's dirt and there's debris and there's rats, and I gotta find some rats. And I'm looking for like 1/35 scale. I know where I can get them, but they're in Germany, and I've talked about this before, and I just haven't ordered from there before. But definitely worth looking into because they're really, really nicely done. I think there are some on like some other sites, but they look suspiciously like the folks in Germany. So I don't think I want to order those. I think I want to get them from where I think the person actually, sculpted them and did them. So anyway, that's another subject. But yeah, having that kind of stuff down in there, I think it'll add to the creepiness factor. It will make fighting down there slippery. Okay, so what we're doing here is this is a D&D diorama, right? And this is supposed to be a sewer system. And so when you're in here, you may have a fight break out. You may be hunting an ogre. There may be demons down there. There may be stuff down there that, you have to engage while you're playing your D&D game. So anything that I can do in there other than water, because I thought water's not going to really add a lot to it. But if there's a bunch of muck and debris, possibly a fallen weapon, so you can, hey, I retrieved a weapon, whatever, or whatever, that would make a little bit more interest in the game for the DM to kind of design around, because this will be in there and it's not going to come out. So the bridge will come out. So anyway, let's go back to this. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to look at that, and I'm going to go back here, if you do not mind. I want to go back up to the top here and just kind of go through this, because this kind of shows what we're going to do. So yeah, I'm going to show you the detailing and painting of the medieval sewers. Now here in this picture, I had done a little bit of work, but that work that you see in the left-hand picture there in the sewers, that was really before I painted the sewers. That was still pink foam. I mean, there was pink foam underneath, and I literally just laid down a little bit of the grit that I used, the sanded grout, and some paint just to kind of get an idea as what it's going to look like. I really needed to paint the whole thing a singular color, and then come back in and do that after the fact. And we're going to do that together today. So that'll be the live demo, and I'll show you my technique, because it's basically all washes. We're in a watery environment. We're next to the ocean. There's going to has to have, some impact there. I'm thinking of a medieval city. These drains are going to get whatever a medieval city lets go down the drains or is thrown into these drains. In the books that I'm referencing, and this is a great little segue. Look at how I did that. In the books that I'm referencing, somehow I got to get there. Magician, which is the story of all of this, is from this wonderful book that I read in the 80s, and I just love the book. There is a reference to how the smells of the city and stuff like that, and there's tanners, like hide tanners and leather tanners and stuff like that, and so all of their waste goes down into the sewer system and makes it a very noxious environment to be in, and sometimes. So again, trying to pull some of the storyline that I'm going to be handling in the diorama from that book, and because it is a beloved book, it makes it very, very fun to do this whole project. Okay, so this is the entire diorama. Not 100% like it looks today, but pretty close, because what I've done is on the above ground stuff, I've kind of built it and done a little bit to it, but it's not finished at all. On the right hand side, the below ground area, I've done the forgotten ancient temple that's down below, or the temple cave, the cave temple, or I have no idea anymore. But above that is the Krondor sewer system, is where we're doing it. And then I kind of call this now the docks of Krondor, because of that dock, that's right on the front of this thing, which I kind of like, because I want to put some dock-ish stuff there, So anyway, so next-ish. Here's what it looks all together. It's just about 44 inches tall. It's 43 3/8 inches tall. at the highest point to the ground. But, when this is all done, and if you can, just imagine this picture here. Whoop. All the way up to the surface, I'm going to have like a wood facade around the below ground areas. And what that's for is when I consulted with I have a D&D consultant. My neighbor is like a big time D&D guy, and he has friends over weekly, and they do a game. And I asked him, hey, would you mind giving me some pointers? I've played D&D. I've never been a DM. So there were some, certain aspects to the game I just am totally clueless to. So I asked him to come over. He brought some figures and all that kind of stuff. And he said, one of the things that's really important is allowing the DM to build the story around the terrain, or, wherever you're playing, and the story and the background and stuff like that. Allow them to surprise, your players. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, because I don't know what's happening. And most of the gaming that I've done, it's been visual. It's the story, and you have to imagine, and there's a board, but it's very rudimentary. So hand drawn on paper. I mean, great, good. But I really want to take the experience beyond that. And so this is my attempt to do that. But in doing that, I really want to be able to have these lower levels hidden. The dock will be exposed. That dock area on the right-hand side, that'll be exposed, but the Forgotten Ancient Temple will be blocked. The Krondor sewer system will be blocked. Around the corner, the Alchemist lab is going to be blocked. We're going to look at that today. So all that kind of stuff will be like hidden from the players, and there'll be parts of even the above ground stuff that I'm planning on putting like panels in so that you can reveal portions of the story as you go. That, and the fact this whole thing unstacks and will continue to unstack, so that during gameplay, you can maybe start with it all built up, in this tall form. If I can, there you go. There's where you start your game. The bottom is all covered and stuff like that. There's like a facade around it and stuff like that. Here's where you start your game, but these 6 levels all come apart. And so as you play it, you can set them down flat on the table, your gaming surface, and have your game, play it. So that's the whole gist of it. So right now I'm working on the middle part, and the middle part is so important because what it does is it connects everything. It connects the top with the bottom, and I need to have access from the top to the bottom. So the sewers are a big deal. So here's where we started. At the beginning of the week, at the end of last week, I was here. We had the basic structure there. I didn't really have a storyline much in here. One is growing, but I had some needs. On the right-hand side, you see that doorway. That doorway goes into, let's go back, sorry. That doorway goes into the alchemist lab. I need that to be hidden. Here, there is an open spillway that goes to the bay. And then I've got 2 tracks going to one. So I've got a Y here, so an intersection where water flows in, and there's how you see it from the side. Here's that side where I've got the alchemist lab on the opposite side of it, and somewhere on this platform, I need to have something that hides that doorway. It's supposed to be a secret doorway. This is it in the diorama. And so this is what you see from that alchemist lab. And we're going to talk. I didn't do too much. I just did some painting on the alchemist lab today, or this week, but we will see that a little bit later on. But this is where it sits in the diorama. And there's the front. So that's what you're going to see. And there's the top. So bridge and sluice gates. So this is the first thing I did at the beginning of the week. And this is a little bit bigger. You see that this side right here is straight. It goes straight across. And then what I have underneath here is kind of like, I thought it would be maybe a swinging gate. I thought what I would do, and I'm going to try to set this up so you can see a little bit better on the top down view, but here, this is inside. So here's where this goes. I can back this out a little bit. So this is where the alchemist lab goes, And I've got this on here because I'm going to get wet work on it. So I'll set this here for now. Sorry about that, folks. So this is the orientation, and you look in here, there's your alchemist lab that still can be removed. And here's what I worked on. And initially I thought, I need access to this side just to give like some high ground in here to give some interest, but also I wanted some means of controlling the water flow. And the reason for that is I had this idea of building this little area below. This comes out. And I think it'll stay coming out for gameplay. But down here is a passage to the temple cave. And so I needed some way to see it, but not have it fully exposed. So when I originally built this, this came straight across here. It was too not seeable, or whatever you say. And then I cut that back. Just a second, I'm going to cough. Okay, that's better. I needed some water. It was getting dry. So after cutting this back and then making just these regular sluice gates, then I went and made these little mechanical lifts just for interest. I think, I just think they look a lot better. I think they look cooler. And I always appreciated a board game growing up, even before D&D and Global and, all those other kind of, fun games. I always appreciated games that, like the Game of Life or Mousetrap, that gave you some kind of a physical thing that you could fixate on, and couldn't wait till I could, employ that or deploy that in the game. That was always fun. Even in Monopoly, just the little houses. It was just cool. It was just some tactile thing to connect you with the game. That's what this stuff is. It's just some means to also, for the story, give some interest there, but also give you, the player, some kind of a tactile connection to the game. There's nothing wrong with, drawing out, a map. That's how this all started. But I'm just like one of those people, just like, I don't know, I'm a child, so I like to have fun with it, so that's why. I've got some people that jumped in. I would really like to say hello. So, Mani, I said hello to John, so thank you very much. And then First Last is here. Hello, thank you very much. Happy Friday indeed. And then Mark is here. Hello. Thanks very much for coming in, Mark. I really appreciate it. So I just want to say hi to those folks because they're really, really nice folks. Okay, so let's go back to this. The challenge in this was, making it do something, giving something here to mitigate the water. And when you look over here, you can see these lift and lower, and they can be, brought up and stuff like that. But the whole purpose was to be able to say, look, if there is water coming through these, you can drop both of these, and that will prevent water from going down here and will drain the place below it. Because, and let's look at that real quick. I've got it right here. Sorry for jumping around. But the place below is our temple. And the temple is kind of like the big boss fight. That's where you're headed toward and you want to get to. And I didn't have a way to get here. There was an idea of maybe doing a transport or a portal to get down here. I was thinking of a fissure, because this stacks right on top. The other piece. Sorry, this is very clunkety. It just goes right on here, and of course you can't see it. It just goes right on top like that. But I was thinking of, inhibiting the water flow down here to kind of help drain it or something like that. I've got water markings here from like the tide coming in. It's a coastal city, but this is supposed to be basically a temple carved out of solid rock. So the only water that gets in would either be from the top, which is what I'm putting in. Let me get this out of here again without damaging anything. That's the hard part. So if the tides bring a little bit of water in, and there's no water coming in through here. You could drain and get down there and do what you have to do. It's just another element that could be added to the gameplay. It just gives, it doesn't have to be in every, campaign that's written to be played within this, but it does give the DM an option. And that's the whole thing. I'm putting a lot of things in the diorama that give the DM options of changing the story or building a different story, utilizing the same terrain, the same deal. Where, I mean, you could even just remove the bridge and it's not there. There's no water mitigation whatsoever, but there's this pit, there's this well in the sewers. So yeah, that kind of thing I'm really trying to throughout as I design it, give the ideas or the opportunities for the DM to come up with ideas. I guess I could have just said that very easily at the beginning. So so when we start working on this, what we'll do is I'll show you how I go about making those water rivulets, not a full thing, but just a trickle through here. How I add the sanded grout in here to go ahead and make it look like, grit and things have come down here from above. And generally just show you my process for making what I would deem a stream bed, with water flow and muck and stuff coming down it. So that is coming up. Okay, I am going to swap over to this here. And so this thing that's sitting under the original bridge, again, that was supposed to be a big gate. It would go and basically divert one flow or stop one flow of one of the two Ys coming into the main part of the sewer, the trough. And that's that. I got rid of it. I didn't like it. I imagine, a big wheel that you could turn or something like that. I didn't like it. It didn't fit very well. Oh, it fit great. It didn't fit the storyline very well. That I'm trying to imagine. So I got rid of that. Then looking below, trying to figure out how I'm going to mitigate water and stuff like that is where I came up with the sluice gates, and I started building those. That was it initially, just kind of get it to fit. And then I built the borders around them. And then I started, building or I cut the hole in there. And then this is just some, when I'm making these little stone pieces, I think I explained it before, but if you haven't done it before, I just took and cut some thin strips of the pink foam, cut them out, cut the squares. But the key is to put them in a container with an aggregate, something that is sharp. Gravel works perfect. So I took a little bit of gravel, put it in there with them, and then I shook it for a good 15 minutes. I'm like walking around the shop, shaking this container with these in it. And what that does is like a rock tumbler. It rounds all the edges of these little pavers, these little cultured stones. It just makes them look a lot more natural, because they've got quite sharp edges when, you first cut these things out. So I built those up. I glued them in individually. And then once they were glued in, I went ahead and put not sanded grout, but I put some of the wall spackle on it and made it look like it's just got a bunch of stuff and packed it in there. Okay. So let's go back and look at this. There it is under the bridge now. And then here's the supports behind the sluice gates. There's one on one side here, but I did put them on both sides. Here's where I put that material in there. And this material is one of my favorite materials. I just brought the whole, I could have just taken a picture, but this is the Polyblend sanded grout. And I first learned about this from Andy's hobby headquarters, Andy Klein. And that's the most greatest thing for me, because that started my whole journey, if you will, path in dioramas. I could not figure out ground. I could not figure out a material that gave me the texture that I needed for ground until I found this sanded grout. And the application couldn't be easier. And I'm show you today, because I do the same thing here, is I use a little bit of Mod Podge with water. So it is thin, about 50%. And I put that down with this, and then I use more water or more Mod Podge to clear out the areas that I don't want the stuff. And I'll show you how to do this, because the technique, I think, lends really nicely to having grit built up in a specific area. And then I can add other things to it. I mean, this works here, but it could be like on a street. It could be, anywhere where you're going to have dust or dirt built up. So that's, I think it's just something that I've used for so many different things in diorama building. It's one of those materials that I can use again and again and again. So that's part of the demo. About BD, where am I going? I'm going over here. This is when I started making the mechanism to lift the sluice gates. I've seen many of these, actually. As a kid, we lived in the mountains. We live in the mountains now, but we lived a little bit more remote, and we had these little 3 ponds that were stacked. And so they had little sluices at the end of them. And the older gentleman that built it, eons before, would come down and they would put in different of these little sluice stops or gates that would raise or lower the ponds at different times of the year. And you could just remove them to drain the pond. They were old cement ponds, just very basic ponds off of a creek. Very, very, almost like a drain. But because of the ponds, they held water. And so I had a really neat chance to play around with that, and water skeeters and frogs and crawdads and all that kind of stuff growing up. Well, it's just one of those other things that makes a project like this so personal and so fun, because as I'm building stuff, I'm reliving these memories. I'm pulling those images back into my brain so that I can utilize them in detailing it and trying to get that finite detail. So that's one of the fun things about building dioramas, and specifically this one, because it is really something where I'm not building on somebody else's image. I'm building on my own memories and my interpretation of the book that I'm following, Mr. Feist's writings. And that just makes it very fun. So anyway, enough about that. Let's go back here. I started working on the mechanism. These are, I have no idea. I think I don't know what kind of wood this is. Is this mahogany? It's not mahogany. I want to say it's not mahogany because I don't know. Okay, so I made these little things. I know the little supports are sapele. This little support up here, that is sapele. Those arms are not sapele. I beat these things up, and what I do there is it's all nice, rectangular or square material when I start, but I'll use my small files and really beat them up. They're also going to be painted. There's going to be a lot of wear on these things because they're underground. They're not seeing light. Whatever grows in that underground muck environment is going to be growing all over this stuff. So they really start to deteriorate. I think it may be a faster rate. That's kind of what I think, but there's also maybe a preservative because of the chemicals. I don't know. So I wanted it to look like it was old and beat up. So once I paint it, this is going to help that a lot. So that's what that looks like. Here's the other side of it. It's a very, very simple mechanical device, but making it, where I've got the little slot in the head. You see the head of it has a slot instead of a hole. That's just helping it because it would bind if I didn't have that. Here, you see that slot is around that pin that goes in the sluice gate. If that little slot were just a hole, it just wouldn't function properly. So that's just part of like woodworking stuff. If anybody needs some advice on doing stuff like this, I can help. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Now to try to conform, there will be stuff that I put in there built up around it. So the only place to get through is the center of it. And there it is, fully extended. That's what the little piece looks like, the whole bridge pulled out. And yeah, I'm going to leave it so you can remove it. I think that's important for gameplay. And then that's just the other side, and that's with them fully up. Now, I was going to make something that some kind of lever or this I still may do is on the end of those little levers where you pull down the part that you pull down. I might make that where it's got an eyelet and a piece of chain, and maybe the chains come down to another set of eyelets where you come back to a central one so you can set them. You know what I mean? I mean, that might look cool, and it might look more because a lot of the civil engineering was done by boat builders and vice versa. Home builders were boat builders and boat builders were home builders, and all that kind of stuff meshed back then. So a lot of that stuff went back and forth. And here's another place where it could, because chaining down or lashing with chain on a ship was very common. So you would have the bracketry, you would have all of that stuff available. So that may be going in there. Hey, and I got some more folks came in. James Robinson. Hello, James. Hello to you all. Hello to you. Thanks very much for coming in. And Whelans is here. Hello, Whelans. Hello, everybody. Completed my own stream a few minutes ago. No kidding. Well, we need to take a look at it. We're going to look at just a couple of pictures later on from Martin Holst. Martin did a Kettenkrad like I did. And his is much nicer than mine. But we're going to look at those later on for a really, really fun thing that we did earlier this week. Martin finished his week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. But it was for a build for the Plastic Posse Podcast. And it was really fun to participate in that. So we'll look at that a little bit later on. Whelans, I'd love to see your stream. That would be very, very cool. Because I don't know why, as a kid growing up, I had woods available. So we'd go out in the woods. And I just loved playing with streams. You got the little frogs, you got the little tadpoles. Streams were awesome growing up. So now creating one, again, attaching those childhood memories to what I'm building now. Super fun. Very, very cool. Okay, so let's go back to this and see what we're doing. That we're good with, I think everybody got. Here is the only real work that I put into the Alchemist Lab. I just started working with some of the colors to build up the colors. When I'm doing these colors and this detailing and stuff like that, sometimes I do tests because I really think that it needs to be so many layers of colors that I don't mind like throwing something on and say, oh, that doesn't work. I'm not afraid to do that, because if it doesn't work as a primary color there, as a secondary color or a background color for other things that I add on to it with washes and those types of techniques, it's brilliant. I want to really have a lot in there, even colors that you don't think would be there, because in this instance, this is an alchemist laboratory. What if something blew up? Which is always something that they talk about. I'm going to have let's go back there and you can see along the top, I haven't done anything because I'm going to have like dark. I'm going to want to spray paint that like smoke. There's been a lot of smoke in this room, and that would go up, billow up, and you would see that signature on the walls. And so that's, part of what I want to accomplish there. So, and that's what we're going to look at as I show you doing my, washes in the troughs of the trench once we get there. Shane is here. Hello, Shane. How's it going, sir? It's great to see you, Shane. Shane's been, really following this one really closely as well, which is really neat. We get to talk, multiple times a week and stuff. So, well, I say talk. I really feel it's fun because on the texts and stuff like that, when I post my daily shorts, it's really fun because I get so many comments of people that now I've been doing it for a couple of years in some instances, certainly, or more. And it's really fun to be able to connect and talk about stuff and even reference older stuff that we talked about before and stuff. And it's really, really cool. So when I say talk, I mean, I'm texting madly back and forth with some folks. And it's great. I really enjoy it. I get a lot of ideas, no joke, a lot of ideas. And I've said this many times before. People that are on here today, Mark Doremus, specifically, give me a lot of information, a lot of input for the diorama. And that's something that I didn't expect going into this. I didn't expect that I would number one, be willing to take that input. I got my idea. You say what you want. I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing. I don't know if I thought that way or if I would be offended that somebody, thought that, but it's not that way at all. It's really fun because we have more discussions about elements and, why this would be cool and why wouldn't it be cool and would this fit or wouldn't that fit? I get a lot of folks because I do some historical things that say, hey, no, that actually wouldn't be like that. And that I value not above anything else, but I highly value it because I do want it to look right. And I do maybe sometimes not go with my research, or I haven't, I've been building this since the beginning of the year, maybe March, I think I started it. I haven't done years of study. And I've had some folks that have contacted me about the construction of the half timber home, the Tudor home, or building, and said, no, this is why they did this, and this is how they did this, and that wouldn't look like that. Brilliant. I mean, it was very, very helpful to me as a builder because I want to achieve what is in here based on my books and my own, working with those stories and trying to come up with my own story. But to add the elements that somebody else thinks of that I didn't think of or didn't remember or never even had a concept of adding something like that. It's really fun. I don't plan these things out because I love those little epiphanies or whatever you call it, where you just like, oh, here's a great idea. And that happens throughout the build. That's one of the reasons I don't go into a totally structured thing. I mean, I've seen people, and I have a friend that does amazing work, Martin Drayton, and did this picture. And this is very common in scale modeling if you're a little bit new to that. But, they'll take a picture, a reference picture, and they'll reproduce it in plastic form, diorama, everything, figures, everything. And literally, it looks like the picture. That's brilliant. I think for me, that's a huge challenge because while I'm building, I'm looking for places to add detail. And if that picture, because some of them are kind of sparse, it's in battlefields and stuff like that, at least the pictures I'm referencing, it's kind of sparse. And I would want to have more detail. I would want to find the minuscule and the minutia and the things that if you really dig in there, you see the lizard on the rock. You know what I mean? That kind of thing really excites me. So to find those opportunities while I'm building and say, hey, I could, those are wonderful moments during a build. If I were just trying to achieve a picture or complete a design that maybe somebody else designed and I'm trying to replicate, it would be just like, well, I have to do this next. I have to do that next, to get it done. To me, that is not as appealing to, I have no idea what I'm going to build tomorrow, which is the honest truth, but I have an idea, and the discovery of those ideas is thrilling. It's actually really, really super fun. You have to have the right noodle for that kind of thing and enjoy that kind of thing. But for me, it keeps it very fresh, very engaging, and a surprise. I surprise myself all the time with ideas. There's things I'm working on right now, never thought I'd be working on. And that is fun. So it's like discovering your own stuff, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. Okay. So anyway, let's get back to this. I'm not delaying. I promise you. So there we have, which will be a lot more added to it, certainly. And then here is the Plastic Posse Podcast 100th episode group build. Here we go. We got some comments. I'm sorry. Let me get to here, and then I can hit some comments. Homefront Forge, Daniel says, things have hidden fire the imagination. I think so. I agree with you. I think that is a very intriguing thing, to have that. I need to switch my camera over here, but I have to open something to show you Martin's build, because Martin's build is better than Bill's build. And I want you to see it because it's really, really nice. So I'm working on something over here. But let's do this. Bobbity, I want to do not that. I'm sorry. These always go so well. I'm surprised that this isn't going better. So I'm not. There we go. So this is Kettencraft Rad or a Kettencrad. I don't know. I have the box. I should probably look. But what this was the Plastic Posse Podcast is a really great podcast, by the way. They are modelers, like lots of folks. And they're the type of folks that totally get into it. And some that aren't, immersed in it. But it's really neat to be able to talk and, listen to them talk and the conversations that they have concerning modeling. Growing up, modeling for me was another toy. It wasn't my primary focus. I'm the person that I'm everywhere, right? In the Plastic Posse, there's folks that has been their primary focus for their hobby their whole life. And with that, the depth that they've gone into to explore the hobby and stuff is well beyond my depth of understanding of it. And now that I'm into modeling more and more, I am interested in those things. I am interested in box art. Who made it? Who first made it? When it was remade? The designers of the models, the owners of the model companies, other amazing modelers. It's a really neat community of folks on the Plastic Posse that feed them with wonderful questions and wonderful ideas, and they go to the shows and they meet people and they bring all that to you on the podcast. And the cool thing is, I used to think, man, I can't listen to a 2.5 hour podcast, a 3 hour podcast. I can't do that. Then I started listening to it while I built. Oh, I can do it. And it's awesome. The thing that I like to do when I build typically is I'll have a movie on the TV up there or maybe here, and I don't watch it because I'm paying attention to modeling. But it's playing, so I have it going in my head. Pardon me. And it's like Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that, because I just watch Lord of the Rings, just watch it over and over and over. So I can play the movie in my head, but I don't have to not concentrate on working on it. I can visually see it, because I know the movie well enough just by listening. Well, that was my normal thing. And I thought it would be distracting listening to a podcast. It's not. You got to get used to it and stuff like that. And it's really informative and really fun. So I'm not, shilling for these guys, but I really do enjoy it. And if you're interested in that, check out the Plastic Posse. And then it opens up a whole bunch of other podcasts too that do the same thing. And with different styles and stuff like that. And it's just a world I hadn't really explored. and I really enjoy it now. So yeah, if you get the inclination, please check it out. So all that goes to say they just had their 100th episode, and during that they started a group build, and what it was is 148th Tamiya kit, war type vehicle, military type vehicle, and you had, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks. So I built this little Kettenkrad, and then it sat until the very last day. So the very last day, literally, I set aside, and it was this week. I set it October 2nd at midnight. I set that thing aside because I got basically it was built, and I had the primary color, the base coat on it, and the black. That's it. I had 2 colors, and it was built. And then it sat the whole time. And then on the 2nd, probably around noon, because that's where I switch over to the bench stuff, I started working on it, and then I painted it. And the day before I got my oils ready, you know how you set your oils out on a piece of cardboard? I never knew that until friends told me how to do that. So I set my oils out the night before, and so my oils are ready to go, and that's what I did. And I'm not as good at and you'll see this. I'm not as good at aging or weathering, because I go a little bit too heavy, or a lot too heavy. You'll notice when you see a vehicle, it's not going to look like this. I mean, I think it looks good because the weathering is cool, right? But in honesty, it's not going to look like this if it's cared for in any fashion whatsoever. I mean, this could be up in somebody's house in Alaska, and they use it to, run to the barn and back. It's going to look better than my weathering, because it just wouldn't get that dirty and grungy to keep it operational. It looks like it's been sitting in a, I don't know, just sitting abandoned. And typically I'll work that into it because I know my limitations of doing, weathering and stuff like that. And I'm not doing this to gain praise or anything like that. I honestly realize this about my work, and I'm trying to get better. But the point is, it's just a little bit overly done. So one of the things that I did this time that I was super happy about, and I don't know if you can see it as well, but see the sides, and then you see the top. Well, that top looks a lot brighter. Well, that is brighter because I did this tone thing on it, and I've never done that before. I mean, I've seen, Night Shift do it, and he does great and stuff, and lots of other folks do. Obviously, I don't know. Adam Wilder's been doing it for years and years and years, but I had never done it where you take, and I wanted to show the sun on top of it had faded it, and not necessarily the sides, and I did that. So I was like super happy. So you can kind of tell. You can tell now that I told you, but I don't know if you would have noticed if I hadn't. But I was really happy with that. And then the leather seats, that is total Martin Drayton, watching him do his seats. And I'm not where he's at, but I was very happy with my leather after looking at what Martin did. But it was like I said, it was really fun. It was all done in a day, and it was wet when it was done. So it was a lot of fun. So now what I am trying to do over here is I'm trying to get Martin's pictures up. And I'm on my knee. I got him here. I just got to get him on the screeny. And I don't know why this is so difficult. Thank you very much for your patience. And it's worth it, I promise you, because Martin's stuff is absolutely brilliant. So let me see. Okay, that'll work. I can do it. There is Martin's Kettenkrad craft. It's Kettencraft Rad. See, that's what I thought it was. Kettencraft Rad. And it's just beautiful. And it's a nice little scene. And the other thing that I commented to Martin earlier about is this year, I think it's been about this year, he's really kind of gone into his photography and how he does, photographing his models when he's ready to present them. Really, really nice stuff. And that is super important, hugely important. If you're building, I mean, just think about it. And I struggle with this because, I try to do stuff with depth and then trying to take pictures of it. But to get good photographs of your stuff, I'm sorry, is this going to advance properly? There we go. To get good photographs of your stuff, that's how you're showing people what you've done. Look at that terrain. See, I'm a big guy for terrain. That is just brilliant, Martin. Very, very nice job. But to show people your stuff, that's the only way to do it is to take, good photographs. So take photographs of where you want to see it and how you want to present it, and find somebody that does this, that you admire their photographs, and ask them how they do it. I can promise you they're going to come back to you and say, this is how I do it, because I've done it. And everybody's been super great about it. And I just noticed that another gentleman just jumped on here who's amazing at taking photographs too. So Aaron is here. Aaron, hello. Oh no, the kitten crad. And it's 1,001 lubrication points. There are so many missing historical records on that beast. Can you imagine? Neil is here. Hello. Hi, Bill. Hello, Neil. Thanks very much for coming in. Neil does some amazing photographs, and he uses smoke. And I think Martin is starting to use smoke too. I think he did. I'm not sure if it was real or simulated, but I think, didn't you do a photo, Martin, with smoke? Shane says, have you thought about replacement of the alchemy stuff in the room? Also, are you going to add normal clutter, ruined books, bottles, and such? Yes. The alchemy stuff is next. Well, I mean, I'm still working on that, but as the sewer, I'm working on that. I'll switch over to the alchemy, because I want to have a bunch of stuff in there. Mrs. Modelcraft just got me a skeleton, a full skeleton, but it's huge. So I'm thinking of making it look like a giant skeleton, a giant's skeleton, or an ogre, something like that. So I'm going to have that in there. I'm really excited to do, that kind of detail. But yeah, old bottles and all kinds of stuff. Neil says, needs mud. It does need mud. We're going to do that. I'm going to show mud later on today. Sorry, spotty reception here. I'm in the hurricane zone. Oh my gosh. If you haven't checked out Night Shift, he does good work. Night Shift is brilliant. One of my very first kind of persons, the person that showed me how to do chipping. I knew how to do chipping, right? But I hadn't seen anybody do it as well as Night Shift. And that was, probably 2020. 2019, 2020. It was right at the beginning of COVID, and before COVID, I really started getting into it, and love Night Shift. I've talked about this before. When I find somebody, new that I attach, like they do this one thing, it's weird. I kind of don't go back. Now, I've gone back to Night Shift many times and looked at many videos. That's not the point, but I'm not like a hard following Night Shift, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to pick up habits that make me a mimic of Night Shifts. Not saying I could. His stuff is brilliant, but my subconscious method of doing that is to, when I find them that they do one thing, bam, I take that from them, and I love that knowledge, and I keep it, and then I move on. Night Shift does a lot of other stuff. I am aware of this, but I kind of know Night Shift for chipping. That's it. Literally. I'm like smacking my camera. Sorry. But that's it. That's just how my brain works. So I know Night Shift for chipping, and I love it. And I even go back and watch that chipping video, and Don't Do This is the name of the, in the thumb. And everybody will know it if they've seen Night Shift. It's a great, great video. But yeah, that's where I learned to do my chipping. And then it was just on to the next person. Photos are everything. Absolutely. And learning how to take those photos the way you want your project seen. When I first started doing this, I don't know what I'm doing. Or actually before I started doing this, I'm just taking pictures of my stuff. Okay. I'll put it that way. I just would take a picture. And then I started saying, well, but I did that little detail. So I just take the camera and I go like this. And then I take the camera and go like this. Well, you'll notice that a lot of when people put stuff up there, they're giving you the view that they want you to see something in that view. Learn how to do that. And I say that because some people don't. They take a picture to show everything. I think that's great. Like, call it an establishing shot, but get in there and show the stuff you want to show. It is super interesting to see one little tiny, tiny detail that is just like in the corner and hard to see, or it's like it's a shovel that you just painted the shovel and it's just flipping amazing, right? Show it, you know. So that's kind of what I mean about photography too. You know, that's parts of it. Thanks, Bill. Hey, you gotcha, Martin. You got to check out Martin's stuff, please, folks. I went on his Facebook. He's quite active, and so he's always building something. He's like 3 projects down the road from this, and this was done last week, or I'm sorry, 2.5 weeks ago. But I mean, you'll really, really see some great stuff. And the neat thing about posting online, if you haven't yet, or you think I'm not good enough yet, or whatever, because I had those feelings. I'm not saying this about you. I'm saying this about me. I had these feelings. I'm not good enough yet to post. Posting your project helps you get better. And it's not in a pressured way or something like that. There's something psychologically that happens maybe when you're building that you're saying, you know, I'd like to post this. So you have that in your brain. And I'm a big person for I'll do one part of something and I'm done and I'll move on. It may not be done. I'm done working on it and I move on. So it's like I did 3 of the 4 wheels. This is a ridiculous example, but it's an example. I do 3 of 4 wheels and I move on. I'll build the rest of the vehicle and it's done and I got 1 wheel unpainted. I'm that kind of builder. I don't know why. I'm that kind of builder. The worst kind of builder, maybe. So when I started posting, I'm like, well, I don't want to do that to somebody that's expecting to see something. Because I mean, there's a little empathy involved in that, I suppose. I don't literally want to put something out there, and it's not for me. If I don't finish something, I just don't finish it. I'm fine with that. There's a whole bunch of stuff over there not finished. I don't have a problem not finishing stuff because I know I may go back to it. But I do feel bad for the folks that have like watched 7 episodes and expect number 8 and we're, well, what? You know, where's 8? What happened? Where'd you go? I'm invested at this point, you know? And so that right there helped me get a little bit beyond my ADHD, want to go and do something else, you know, bird, and you just run after the bird, shiny object syndrome, whatever you want to call it. I have that. I'm working on this, but that's really, really cool. And I just start working on it. Posting made that kind of go away. And I'm not sorry for it. I don't believe that I've missed anything. Now, because I build kind of more complicated stuff, it is always changing and it is always different. So I think it's easier for me, at least, to stay on one project because there's all this different stuff going on. And that helps the challenges shift daily in how I build so that I can stay interested in one project. So that's just, you know, me. Different folks have different way to do it, but posting like Martin does, showing your stuff. I'm not saying Martin has gotten better. I've seen a neater pictures of neater projects that Martin has done, because I don't want to say somebody's better, good. You know what I'm saying? I'm really shy about doing that stuff. I just like Martin's work and it looks better than it used to, and I'm really happy for it. So there you go. I don't know how to talk. John says, excellent work, Martin. Love the rust detailing, and it is really good. And that's the other thing about his rust detailing. If you look at it, and this is where, you know, I went over and I made reference to this last week and actually the week before. I'm going to go back to this picture again. Look at Martin's rust. It's appropriate. It's not crazy. It's where it ought to be, and I love that. Do I have the? I didn't get really the close enough shot to the side of the Kettenkrad because that is a really, really good one. But yeah, it's definitely it's weathered appropriately. It's just, I don't use reference pictures. I like to build out of my head. I just find that very, very enjoyable because I'm pulling on memories of something like that. Every once in a while I look and it's like, well, that doesn't look like that at all. But I want to build out of my head. If I looked at something, maybe I could do better. Manu, I got to get back to where I was, and I don't know where that is. Ask away. Okay, so Martin said, because I got a bunch of comments over here. Martin says, ask away. These are done with a regular Android phone, by the way. And that's really cool. You can do brilliant photos with just your smartphones these days. I've got an older one. Mine's a 10S Apple. Brilliant photos and videos. It's really good. Home Front Forge. Daniel says, are you the weathering a barn find diorama with an old classic under tarp would be cool. Duster over everything, cracked windshields, bird nests. I can see it. I love that. See, that is fun to me. I think it adds interest, especially the tarp, because you're like, what's under there? What's it look like underneath there? Yeah, that's great stuff. American Genius here. Hello, Christian. How's it going? You're getting pretty close. That is in 13 days is that show up in Canada. So that's very, very exciting. I'd love to see some of your stuff, Christian. Afterwards, obviously, you might want to premiere some stuff there, but love to see some of your stuff to come in. Martin says, no smoke, just dirty lens. There you go. Yeah, maybe that's how you do fake smoke. You just kind of, get some stuff on that lens. His Zimmer stuff is interesting as method of reverse layering his colors. Yeah, so that would be something fun to talk about because reverse layering your colors, meaning maybe going from light to dark, dark to light, or what you assume would be first or last. I've never come to a process. So Martin, do you actually have a process that you follow? I know friends of mine, Eric Christensen, really fantastic painter, IPMS Seattle president. Man, his armor, it's those ones you look at, it looks real. It's just little. He's that kind of painter. And he's got like this 29-step process. And I guess maybe through repetition, that becomes something like that. But every time I approach something to paint it, I know kind of things in the past that I've done to help my painting process, but I don't have a set process. I know some people do, some people don't. So I'm just wondering, do you have a process? That would be cool. And for good photos, use a lot of light, daylight, color. That's a big one. Your lighting. I didn't realize how big lighting was. And lighting is huge. I'm good at mimicking, have motions and blowing techniques that way. So watching lots of footage and absorbing that adds a lot to my toolbox. I end up twisting it in my own strange thing. I agree. Aaron, I'm very much that way too. I'm a very visual learner. If I see something, I can, like you say, mimic it, or I can do it. I can draw it. I can paint it. I can build it. I can do all that kind of stuff. But it's that conceptualizing that I struggle with, that's hard. Aaron says, Martin Hulse, I think the natural light temp works best for real with stuff, but higher temps like 5K tends to be better for super saturated fantasy sci-fi colors. I've just learned here in the last 3 years about color temperature. I knew amber and I knew bright white. That's what I knew of color temperature. Now I know the whole range thing and I have to set my lights. And I think that's interesting how that affects your paint, but also when you're taking your photos. Longer exposures, low light, and just wipes out your depth, but everything's in focus like a pin camera. I mean, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of fun stuff that goes into it too. I've got ADHD, so I have to leave projects and eventually go back to them once I've started 10 more other projects and haven't been finished quite getting back to my trench again this week. See, I know that feeling, sir. I know that feeling, Neil. And literally before the channel, that's how I worked. I would have 5 or 6 projects going on, active projects. And I would come in and say, what do I feel like working on? Or, maybe overnight I'm sleeping, or I wake up thinking, maybe I could do this or that, on one of those 5 projects. And lots of times one of those 5 projects never got finished. I still have some over there, many over there, because either I haven't figured out the move to go to the next level, or I just get bored with it. That's the other thing. You start on these things, a project, whatever your project is, and you're in a certain place, you're a certain time. You've seen some movies, you've heard some news, you've been walking around. It's this time of year, whatever. That influences what I'm thinking about that day, what mood I'm in, right? Oh, just this really dark diorama or something like that, what's really sad or something like that. Or I want one that's got a huge amount of movement. And so if I start in on one of those and there's only one of those elements in it, I could really get bored with that soon. But with a diorama like I do, where there's like lots of different areas that I can work on, I can have a much more sullen scene over here. But here, some folks are jumping around and having a great time. So, you know what I mean? That just for me, at least, it helps me kind of keep interested in the project with all that different stuff in it. Amamani. So let's get back in here. Martin says, Aaron, you mean warm? Wow, Aaron, you mean warmer color or cooler? Exactly. I think that's exactly what he's talking about. The 5,000. Oh, if the tarp is interesting to you, then look up the Ghost Clock by Wendell Castle. Brilliant. I need to look at that. I haven't seen that one. I will look that one up, Aaron. I'm not sure. Thank you, Bill. You're very, very welcome, Christian. Your stuff is brilliant, and I love it. And so, as a matter of fact, I would like to see if you're interested, Christian, in showing the technique that you did for polishing your windows. I don't know that that's anything you have interest. I know you're super busy, you're working and all that kind of stuff, but I just think that would be something folks would just love to see. I've never personally done it. I've heard about it and seen the tools and stuff you can get for it, the different, grits and stuff like that. I just never done it. So I think it would be really interesting. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Martin says, my process is basically based on building layers, but no set process. I'm the same way, because so the thing that really changed my mind on this, Martin, was early on when people were doing rock. And I was seeing Luke Towan. I think it's L Towan now. Who's the gentleman in Sweden or Denmark? Marklund of Sweden. He's in Sweden. Marklund of Sweden. They would do these rock cliffs, and they called it the leopard technique or something like that, where you're taking just blotches of just different color, odd colors, that you wouldn't think of rock, and putting all over it. And then you go about blending. I didn't know that before. I knew that there was different colors and stuff. Yeah. But a technique for painting rock, that I never knew that. So once I saw that, I'm like, well, I do that with everything now, pretty much. Because I love the fact that I can be looking on in a green thing, and then there's a yellow, right? It's still a natural color and I guess basically a shade of green. Yellow will go to green. But that really was a really, really cool thing when I started doing this painting, especially for terrain. The other thing about terrain is you never want to have one color, minimum 3 colors. And typically what I'll do is I'll put down a base coat, and that's a color. and then minimum of 3 colors over it to get whatever tone or color that I want. And it's more here and less there. And it's very fluid and very well, I do it wet. So it is literally very fluid. But it evolves as you do it. And it makes it very fun. I do this for things like Martin did, like his terrain here. I would do it for that. And it looks like he's done something similar to that. Because you do see that modeled appearance of the terrain. I think, if you think about a singular color that needs to be brown, that's not going to do it. You have to think in terms of that is going to be a tone of brown with a whole bunch of colors in it. So just like Martin's saying, yeah, bunch in there. Let's go. LED lights that change color are great. They are. I love LED change color. And I love that one that you have where you have that big one that's over that you can change the whole mood of the room. Wow. I just love that. It's really, and the smoke that you use carries that light and brings sharp and it's just phenomenal. If you guys haven't looked at Neil's stuff online, please do. Neil Bullard online in Facebook. Brilliant stuff. And folks, if you haven't yet, please and you can put it right in the comments. You can put your link to your website, your channel, your page, whatever, so other people can have it. I encourage you to do that. Aaron says, Martin Hall's cooler for fantasy sci-fi. It seems to help draw out the wider range of colors. Oh, there you go. Okay. So cooler, meaning kind of the blues, the higher colors, the bluish, the 5000s and stuff like that. 4500 is like normal room, incandescent light, whatever. 4500 is usually what I have them tuned to. And then I can take, like this one right now is on 2900. I can go to 7100. See that blue that changes? So you can just change the color of your light. And that's the cool light that Aaron's talking about. Here's the warm light, the 2900. So anyway, yeah, it's really cool stuff. Excuse me. Usually just buy build layers, primer, base color, protective layer, hairspray, next color, including post shading with extra colors, new protective layer of satin coat, then extra shading and weathering. Yeah, there you go. And I agree exactly with what Martin is saying. It's not necessarily a process where I do up. I've got this general flow of, okay, I do this, I do that, I do this. And like those protective coats, those are pretty important, though I've never really gone back with the protective coat, to be perfectly honest. And a protective coat is a clear coat that if you put something over it, you can take that off somewhat and not destroy the other work that's happened prior to that protective coat. Makes good sense. But there's other methods that you use where you use a gloss clear coat to affect more like streaking and things like that. Then you go to a flat clear coat in the final. So there's all these different things that you can explore and get into later on as you get into it. I've done some of it, but there's a lot there. I mean, there's a great quote from woodworking. And Stickley was where I first read it because my woodworking background. And it was something like a life so short, the skill so long to learn. Something like that. It's a wonderful quote from the early, well, I don't know when it's from, but he used it in his stuff, Stickley, in the early 1900s. So the 100 years ago, he was using this quote. And it was something that he had actually carved over his mantle. And I love that because it means, look, if you love something, a skill, a certain kind of thing that you do, you never really become complete. It's a continuous learning process. It is a continuous gathering information, modifying your own methodologies, learning new techniques, and building your overall skill toward the end. And before you get there, you will pass. But it has this really wonderful feeling, I think, of a continuous learning process. Because that's how I live. I mean, I'm just that way. I just love it. And then Martin says, but is that a process? And yeah, I don't know that it's a process. That's kind of where I was going. I don't know that's a process, but it's definitely you know how to get there, right? You may take a different road or a different path this time. You may make a stop here or there, but you know how to get there. I don't know that that's necessarily a process. Yes, generally maybe, but it really depends on the look you want. Star Wars can be very grimy and warm. Good point. Aaron, why don't they make eggshell sheen model varnish? They kind of do. Flat looks so too unworn, but satin is too artificial for my taste. One of the things that I do in getting a certain look on, now I do it with black spray paint, but I'll use like flat black spray paint. And then once it's dry, I'll burnish it. It's not quite satin and it's not flat. It's kind of in between, and I like that look. So that might be one way to achieve what you're looking for. Instead of using one or the other, burnishing it'll have, I would imagine it's got the same effect. Very gritty, but the Imperial look is hyper clean. Cyberpunk stuff has a mix of both. I'd imagine one could delve into it for months. And I like that's the other thing. I like to change around different stuff. Martin does this too. It sounds like Aaron as well. You bounce around, you do different things. I think it's a good idea to do that because you're picking up things from that group that has their specific paints. Because figure painters, Warhammer painters, stuff like that, they have completely different paints. I mean, some of the flake in that stuff is, I swear, each flake is that big for sparkle in it. It's just got these massive flakes in it. Whereas if you're doing so that it's more boisterous, I guess. Whereas if you're doing a regular military or even a vehicle or something like that, you want those little tiny flakes as small as you can possibly get for sparkle, like flakes in paint. So there's a lot of different aspects and different paints for different industries or different types of painting and modeling that you can pull from to get the effect you want. Thanks. Well, you are welcome, Neil. I am so impressed with your stuff. Neil showed me a number, well before I met Neil, which was joyous. Well before that, I saw Neil's stuff because I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan. And he had posted a picture of his large scale figure. And I don't think it might have been Indiana Jones, but it was a like that kind of figure, but a tall figure, not 1/35th scale, but a tall 12-inch figure in this shack that he had built and done and photographed and everything. And pictures are still there, on his channel. I challenge you to find a better, more realistic shack, period. I'm not kidding. It looks real. It's one of those pictures that you look at and you look at for a good little bit. It's real. Totally real. Brilliant stuff. So Neil, and certainly it's your building. Certainly it's your detailing, your painting, your wedding stuff, but also that photography that adds to that. Beautiful stuff. Please go look, folks. It's on his channel. Have you done anything new to the sewer level? Yeah, I have. And we're going to look, I've just been going over this and just yammering, but there is a demo coming up. I'm going to show you live how we paint the sewer. Here's my channel, guys. Everybody, please take a look. Christian does amazing stuff. I'm a follower and a fan. So if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out. But I want to thank you, Bill, because I learned a lot from your show and inspires me to be a better modeler. And great. Well, thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate that. I think it's just that continuous learning thing. Wherever you get the information, and I think, looking outside of modeling, there's plenty of information you can bring into modeling. And thanks, Martin. I think that there is a lot of cross-pollination of inspiration, and it's not like you're challenged by, you see a friend that you know do something new like Martin and go, you get just totally excited for them. And you're like, wow, that's great. I want to try it. That's a pretty neat community. That's pretty awesome. And I've seen other things where it's not like that. It's more of a, I don't want to share. I'm doing this, and that's, blah blah blah, and it's locked off. That's just not modeling. I've not experienced that, and it's really, really fun. Okay, Neil says it was a British SAS soldier in World War II. There you go. Such a cool shot, man, Neil. So cool. So everybody has to go take a look at that. I'll try to have a burnishing technique. I did retail maintenance for years, and everything was eggshell. Yeah. Like this, I want this. Yeah. It would be nice if you had some high value. Now, have you used Mr. Surfacer under to get more texture? That might be something, Aaron. I didn't know about Mr. Surfacer for a long time, and then I found it, and it is a way to add more texture. It is an undercoating, and it's pretty hot, meaning that it has chemicals in it that will melt into, your paint or into the plastic of your model. So it's very hot stuff. So you have to be careful there, but it'll adhere really well because of that. And it'll also add texture. And there's different types. And again, I may be just saying stuff you already know, Aaron, but I just want to make sure I cover it. So this is Mr. Surfacer. And yeah, it's like gritty. You feel it with your fingers. It's like different size grits of sand, and there's all different kinds. This is 500. They're 15,000 or 1,500, 2,000, whatever fineness of grit, and add some really nice texture. And then you paint over it, and you have your texture. So that might be something that would work for you, Aaron. All I need to do now is become better typewriter. Oh my gosh. When I'm typing stuff out, I look down here. I never learned to look at the screen and type. So when I'm typing, I'm looking at the keyboard, and still I'm all over the place. And it's an Apple keyboard, so it's like real low profile. I might do better with like one of those big hunky chunky kind of keyboards, but it's really hard for me to type. And what'll be happening is I'll be doing this, and I'll have hit something weird, and it's like at the bottom of the column, like I'm typing out, there's like a full sentence at the bottom of the column, and I was like trying to insert. Yeah, I know what you mean, Martin. I can't find your channel, Martin. Martin, go to Facebook and just type in Martin Holst. It'll come up just like that. Someone posted their channel name, and now I don't see it in the chat. That was Christian. So that is American. Where is it? I'm going to try to go. Here it is. American Genius 503. That's the one, John. And Christian stuff is amazing. It really is really great. I've shown it on here after last year, or earlier, sorry, this year. And I maybe the year prior, because it was at the show, the February show at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. And I just noticed stuff. I didn't know Christian. And I just noticed these are great models. And I talked about them. And Christian, said something. He said, "Hey, those are mine." So that was really cool. So, and I've been following ever since. So it's really, really good stuff. Okay. And then thank you for the support, and everybody. And Bill, you are the master. Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it, Christian. I just love your stuff. I was just brilliant. I've never really been a precision person. I don't know if that's good, bad, or ugly, or whatever, but I've always kind of been like folk art, if you think about it, maybe that way, where it's a little rough. It doesn't look like it was manufactured like an F-22 or an F-35 should look. So if I do an F-22 or an F-35, it's going to look okay, but it's not going to be looking like it was manufactured and stuff like that. just high precision, all that kind of stuff. When you look at Christian stuff, it looks like it was totally rolled out of the hangar, and all the, the McDonnell Douglas guys and gals are just standing around clapping, like they do when they reveal an aircraft. That's what Christian stuff looks like. It's that nice. It's beautiful. And at like IPMS last year, he won a bunch of awards too. So yeah, you got to look at Christian stuff. It's just absolutely wonderful. Mark says, I anchored my high school typing. I anchored it, did you? With me holding them back, no telling how fast they could have typed. We had to take it, in school, but it was on typewriters. It wasn't on a computer because we didn't have computers in junior high. I mean, they existed. We didn't have one. And so literally you had to, do the thing, and there were strength exercises for your fingers. Think about that. So yeah, and Mark knows what I'm talking about. You actually had to have strength exercises because some of the older typewriters that were still in circulation back then were actually physical push keys. I have an old Remington, which is fun. I got it in the Midwest, visiting my in-laws years ago. So I have an old Remington in there, totally works, and it's fun to type on. But and the sound and the ASMR and all that kind of stuff is really neat. But son of a gun, if you want to get some work done, yeah, forget about it. Creativity and precision are always at odds for the artist. Precision yields a specific desired result, but creativity is wild and produces new things, good or bad. Fair point and great statement, because I think it's, and I know people that have this, when you can have both, they're super precise, but they're artists, and the creativity is there. And I see a lot of machinists that do that, because machining is a really, really difficult skill. So much goes into it, and it's really something that I see where there's art and that science type thing melding, to create things. It's just amazing. Ababri. Okay, so Martin says, my kids can type faster than Bill can talk. How about that? That's easy. That's easy, man. I'm telling you. And because they just grew up with it. It's just like totally easy. Most manual typers, and yep, there you go. We had electric, but it was the electric with like the ball head on it. Remember those? Those are Selectronic. Is that what they were called? I think they were called Selectronic, something like that. Okay. Are we ever going to get to a demo? I think so. Let's go do that. Evening, my friend. Hello, James. How are you? Thanks very much for coming in. That's wonderful. I am going to get over here, and I hope you are fine, James. IBM Selectric. That's the one, Mark. Aaron says, I found that most people, including me, need to feel more permission to fail. Their fear of going in an undesired direction limits their development. Absolutely. And we're taught that. We're taught to, stick to, what you're taught and stuff like that. But buck the system. There you go. So what we're going to do is we are going to go over here. I'm going to show you a little bit of painting. James, that's so really cool that you came in. Does everybody know James from I need to go and look at, maybe I can look it up from your podcast. I would have to look it up over here. Let me work on that. And I'll bring up the podcast a little bit later on, because that's really, really cool. Okay, so we're going to get here to the top down, and I got to turn it on. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about how I go about painting all this jazz, because I think it's a nice technique. So what I've done in here in preparation is I've placed a little bit of that grit previously in here. And that grit is put on there with Mod Podge and water. It's about a 50-50 mix. Here is the grit that I use, and I showed you the box earlier. It's sanded grout. It's the same kind of grout that you're going to use in putting tiles in your kitchen or your bathroom. And so I'm going to use some of that. I've got a little scoop here I'll use, but I'm really going to do most of the work with the brush, because the technique that I use in doing this is basically I'm going to put it on and then I'm going to move it out of the places that I want. So the first thing I'll do is get some of this Mod Podge and water on here. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. But what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I've got enough down here to start with to give it something to stick to. And it's going to get really messy too. Now, what I had earlier was a pan underneath it for dripping, but I can clean up my mat. Because once I get the dirt on here or the sanded grout and start clearing stuff off, I let the water move it. And I'll show you what I mean. We're going to even zoom in here a little bit more. Let's see if I can get this closer so you can see what in the blazes I am doing. How's that? Okay. So again, a little bit of sanded grout. Now, the grout itself, you only have to mix with water. It's got cement in it. So it's going to work by itself to set up. The reason I put Mod Podge in it is the Mod Podge will also seal the surface. The Mod Podge will seal your surface so that paints with a little bit of any kind of like enamel paint or even like Tamiya paint, the chemicals can get in and eat up your plastic, your pink foam. So the Mod Podge will block that and seal it, so you have a surface that won't allow that to get to the pink foam. So that's why Mod Podge in this process is important. So now what I did there is I just took a little bit of that Mod Podge and water mix and I put it in here. And now I can just go back with my brush and I'm just bringing it out of here. I'm trying to make a stream. This is a sewer, and I'm gonna bring it up this one side so it's tipped a little bit so it flows out of there. So what I'm doing is I'm taking water and letting it flow off the diorama. It's all plastic, it's not gonna hurt anything. You know, I'm letting it flow off here. I'm trying not to do it with the dipper, but maybe I will. And then I'll even twist it to guide it. Now, this isn't that big a deal yet, but where this really, and we're going to get there, where this really shows up cool is when I get to the paint. Because I do the paint before this dries. I don't let this dry. I do the paint while it's still wet. So instead of going further, I'm just going to show you right here how it works. So here's where I get acrylic paints. Oils won't work, obviously. If you try to use your Tamiya paints here, it's gonna make a huge mess. They don't act like your acrylic paints are gonna act, and that's what we want. We want the acrylic paint to interact. We want the acrylic paint to flow. We want it to, find little crevices and fall into it. All paints will do that, but the acrylic will do it with water so we can make it flow. So I'm going to take this. I call these blown brushes. You see how it's all feathered out and it's all gooberty. Well, that is perfect for this kind of work. So I'm going to take some orange, pretty bright color. I'm just going to blop it here and there. That's it. Then take some green and do the same thing. Get some a little bit higher up here. Then I need some brown. Now this is a mixture that I use all the time. This is black and burnt umber. And it's not really 50-50. It's probably 60-40, something like that. And then I add water to it. But this is like my base color that I use for my dioramas for like ground. But it works brilliant here too. And being in the squeeze bottle, I love it. I'm just going to put some drops here. And so that's really, really dark. And then I just start working my water. And because I'm doing this as a wash, it's gonna, and the flow is going completely the wrong way, of course, but it helps for the demo. This stuff will mix and it will make rivulets in here just like you're going to have in a sewer, because that's what you see in these sewers. You don't see, water just all the way up to the edges like a creek or a stream. What I've seen in these is like just this little area in the middle flowing, and then and this is what I can't wait to get to, and you're not going to be able to see it today because that is after it dries. But what you see is these little rivulets going across like these edges, and then there'll be little tufts of algae and stuff building up in here. I just can't wait for that part, but that is after it dries a little bit. So you see what I'm doing is I'm coaxing this stuff to drain off, and I'm trying to draw everything down into the channel, because that's how I see it working in the sewer. It's starting on the side. See these sewers, they're curved here on the bottom, so that little angle. So everything starts up here, but everything eventually kind of moves its way down into and then washes away. Once I'm done with our demo, I'll just take this and turn it the other direction, have it go in the other direction. But look at that. See that black and brown paint? It got little chunks in it. Perfect. That's great. I need some more brown paint on this side, or my mix of black and brown. Well, that's a lot. It's okay. I'm going to pick some of this up and move it back here. Other side too. And then back with more water. And then let the water take it. So I will do this. I will do it for the whole thing. I'm doing just a little section here, but I'll have this entire thing wetted down with these colors in here. I'll put more color on top of here, because it is, like Martin was saying, you kind of just mix things in. I know where I'm going, and I'll know when I get there, but it may not be a direct route. So here, see how these rivulets are what I love. It's kind of hard to see, and I'm sorry, I'll try to focus it better. Here we go. But it's those rivulets, they're just these streams of the color going down, and I don't want that much color in the middle. I want the middle to be kind of clean, but it's on the edges of that where I really want to see those colors streaming down, because those colors are like algae and things that are built up inside the drain and all that kind of stuff. Remember, I was talking earlier about tanning liquids from tanning hides and stuff like that. Those are some very noxious fumes. To include urine, I think, was part of that process as well, because urine has ammonia in it. And so they use urine in a lot of those processes. So you have all manner of stuff coming down these. So what I'll do is I'll continue with this. I will continue to add colors. The middle will be kind of a twisting little bit of a water. The sides will be full color, not so much in the middle. And then I'll continue to add more of this to build up where there may be blockages. And it's really because it's relatively flat here. It's these little details on the sides that change the direction of the water flow. Oh, I was about to cough. I did. There we go. Excuse me. Sorry. So think about that. The stuff that's on the side is what's making the direction of the water change. So work that into your plan. That looks better. Excuse me. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm coughing. So that is pretty much what I'm going to do for the whole thing. See, can you kind of see that? Where that center is where the water will flow, but we build up all the other debris on the side, and it's that debris. It's these hard deals here. They're going to change the flow of the water as the water's flowing through. Now, I had it going there for the demo. The water is going to flow this way and this way. So consider that. Here's a piece of wood that's down there. I got to work with that. And these will have to be painted. But again, trying to make sure that I'm interacting. This isn't just flowing this way, haphazardly. It is definitely being kind of, pushed that way because of the debris that's in there. Okay, I think that's good. Let me switch the camera here. There we go. I had a little coughing fit, so I had to kind of recover from that too. So anyway, I think that's pretty good. Let's take a look. We've got sorry, I'm trying to get back to the last comment. IBM Selectric. There you go. Yeah. Just make conversation. Exactly. That's what I'm going to show a little bit later on. I need to go in here because it's a great podcast. And I was on that podcast too. So it was very, very cool. I'm doing okay, Bill. Thanks. Thanks, James. I'm glad to hear it. Aaron, is it supposed to be like beach sand or closer to pea gravel? I think I'm just going for, and I used this term earlier, muck. Meaning that whatever comes down there, it's going to be dirt. There's going to be some rock because they had big drains on the roads, kind of going down into there because it's also a storm drain. So it's catching everything that comes off the roads. There would be dead animals in it. Rats, all manner of things. So that's it. What I'm having down there is basically anything that would come off of the street. So yeah, sure, dirt, a lot of stuff. How did you break the surface tension? Yeah, when it's on there first, you put down the Mod Podge and water first and put it on top of it. It kind of soaks up from the bottom. It does fine. But yeah, surface tension is easy to break with just a little bit of alcohol. The other thing you can do is in my water, see how nice that looks. It was clean when we started. I'll sometimes put a little bit of soap in my water. It doesn't seem to affect how the grout will dry. It doesn't affect it negatively. It doesn't not stick or not dry or something like that. But the soap will also break the surface tension. Doesn't seem to do bad on the colors or how the colors separate or anything like that. So yeah, sometimes I didn't do this one, but sometimes that's what I'll do when I'm working with the sanded grout. Because yeah, if you've got a bunch of sanded grout and you introduce water with nothing to break that surface tension, it'll just sit right there. And that can change the texture that you want. If you spray it lightly with alcohol first, then you can preserve that texture. So very small texture, but yeah. Aaron says, have you tried spray of isopropyl before the Mod Podge can help it spread more before it soaks in, breaks surfaces? Yes, exactly. I use that. And pardon me, that's what we were talking about. I've got a drip bottle of ISO and a spray bottle. And it works great because it'll pull your Mod Podge up through it, so that you can make sure that your Mod Podge goes all the way through it. Jinx Mark, yeah. So you guys were both thinking the same thing. But yeah, so that's how it works. the painting of this is really, I think, for me, gonna make it easier to figure out what the next steps are in having this down here. Before I said I've got to get a door here with some kind of a Heidi something. You can kind of see it there in the light, but I needed some kind of a Heidi way of making that so people don't, know it's there. Well, that led to the bridge because some kind of a water mitigation system. I thought, well, okay, your civil servant, they're going to have to need some way of working with or something like that. So maybe a tool chest here, something like that can be slid away, to hide that. The other factor is right above this, I've got a hole, which is an entrance down here that has to have some rungs coming down. So I've got some things to figure out, and I didn't know where to go. But for me, if I don't know how to get something moving, I go to something that I do know how to do, and that is going to kind of give me the impetus or the ideas, or this is how I move forward, that kind of thing. It'll give me that so that I can go forward and finish that part. So that's kind of the other thing about shifting around and trying to find a different way, maybe to either do it or add something different or whatever. If you find a dead end on an idea that you haven't been able to fully flesh out, continuing to work on the same diorama on a section that you do know, it really does help me figure that stuff out, so I don't stop on what I'm working on and just I can't figure it out, and I put it away and never go back to it. By having another part on it that I can continue to work on, I'm still within the diorama, I'm still within the model, and that helps me figure out those things that I haven't been able to figure out yet. So basically what I'm telling you is stop building models, only build dioramas forever, and your life will be better. It's a simple message, so there you go. Not running for anything, but yeah, there you go. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. I'm having a great time on this. This coming week is going to be finishing this and figuring out the things that need to go into this alchemist lab. I've got all those really cool and fun things that Mrs. Modelcraft bought for me to put in here. And there's some things I'm going to build myself. But it's that point of what's it going to look like? I've got some old ideas from some great old movies and stuff like that. But what's it going to look like? I got to get that in my head. Somebody earlier this week on comments said, I want to do something like this, but how do I start? And I thought it was a wonderful point, comment, because a lot of times we have that. Where do I start? And my kind of advice was try to build an idea of what you want as clearly as you possibly can. Some people can do it in their head. That's how I do it. When I'm building an idea, I can put images in my head. I thought everybody could. Apparently some people can't. So draw it as best as you can. You don't have to be a great artist, but just draw it. Get it down somewhere, get it in your head or get it on paper so that you can see what you want. It doesn't have to be everything, but that becomes your goalpost. So the first thing is develop your idea. Again, in your head or on a piece of paper, develop the idea. And then once you have that idea, just take one part. I typically like to start with the structure, but I know other people don't. Other people, when they're building in their diorama, what they'll do is they'll come up with their idea and they build the model first, the vehicle, the aircraft, the people, whatever, and then they build the environment around it. Perfect. That works great. And I have done that as well, where I start with the vehicle. I don't finish my vehicles. I'll start with maybe a vehicle, and that gives me like the dimensions that I need to work for that vehicle, right? But I'll stop when it's basically at that painted stage, the first base coat stage. That's typically where I'll stop, and then I'll start with it. Another way to do it is say, okay, here's the biggest part of the diorama. I'll start there because you get the biggest thing done first. And I think for me, the best way to start is build just one thing. Take your idea. You've got it in your head. You've got it on paper, wherever the heck it is. Take one part of it, a little tiny sliver of it. Okay. And then just build that. Maybe it's a cart, just like a cart that you hold groceries in. But that's part of my diorama. Well, I don't know how to build a cart. Well, if that's my goal for today, go and look up how to build a grocery cart on YouTube. You'll find it. I bet you. Well, maybe you won't, but. And then once you do that, you learn how to build that one thing. I'm not thinking about the whole diorama. This is part of the diorama, but I'm not thinking about the immensity of the diorama. I'm thinking about that one thing. Build it. Done. Okay. After that, what's it going to look like in its environment? And that's typically where I like to start working on environment, because for me, pardon me, I don't build the environment for the vehicle or for the subject matter. I build the environment as the basis. I think of it like the earth, right? Earth has been here a couple of years before all of us and everything that we've ever done. So it's been around longer. Why not start with that? So you start with your base and your terrain. And the reason I like to start with the base and the terrain in that regard is because anything that I should build, like tunneling or a structure or whatever that's built to the terrain, it adapts to the terrain, not the terrain adapting to it. If I built like this little shack, right? And then I say, now I want to build a base for it. Well, I put it down, I build a base and I put it, and it's going to be rocky and it's not going to fit. Okay. Well, what if I did it like you would build a regular shack? I start with my terrain. Build your terrain. And then build the shack on the terrain. So it's not going to rock because it matches the terrain. So that's an extreme example maybe, but that's why I like to think of it. I like terrain. I like working on that personally, because I think that's where I learned I mentioned earlier, the Sanded Grout and Andy's Hobby headquarters. I learned how to do ground that way. So for me, it's just natural to start with the ground. Once the ground is set, I can go from there. After I've got my ground, after I've got that one thing built, that's the genesis. That's the starting point for all of my diorama. And so if you're not sure where to start, think about that. Get a really good, clear idea in your head or on paper. Build one thing. The structure's a good one thing, or just one object. Just learn how to do that, and then start stacking up those one objects, right? I don't know how to paint figures. Well, go work on just the figures. Don't worry about the rest of the diorama. Just work on those elements. And then there'll come a point in time where you'll say to yourself, well, this element, it doesn't quite fit with this element. But if I did weathering, then it would. So you just weather both elements together. Now that they're both done, you built them separate, but now you can weather them together, which is typically what I would do with my dioramas. I like to build the whole thing as much as I can. And then at the very end, go back and weather the whole thing, because that brings a continuity, that brings a similarity to everything within the diorama. I'm doing this because I do tall dioramas. Your diorama, you would do this. So anyway, I looked at my hands like, why am I doing that with my hands? Anyway, so yeah, that's my best advice in doing it. That's kind of how I did it. I just started like with the smallest things. I think if you think of the immensity of it, that can scare a lot of people away from stopping the start. Never starting. Just build one thing. In the example of Martin Hulst's stuff, he's got a beautiful diorama, and you saw his hand in one. It's this big, and it's a beautiful diorama. So I like building big, complex things. You can do a very, very beautiful diorama without it being big or complex. Okay. So don't let what I do maybe hopefully you're taking some of the techniques I talk about and utilizing those, but don't let what I do scare you away from, diving into a diorama. One of the nicest dioramas builders that I've ever seen is Daniel Buckmeyer. He does stuff where it's a chain link fence, says Auschwitz. There's two people hugging. One is in a striped suit. It's the most mind-blowing diorama. The stuff is just amazing. It's and all of his dioramas are like that. They're very thought-provoking. They're very deep. They're very beautifully done, number one. And there's nothing to it. But the message is so strong. And when you're trying to get across, which is what I like to think of, is like an emotion or a story or a feeling, or you're trying to communicate through your diorama. It doesn't have to be all this flowery crud like I do. Not at all. It can be something like Daniel Buckmeyer's. It can be stuff like Martin Hulse, where it's just very serene. It's this one snapshot and it's beautiful, So think about that. I hope that helps answer that question for folks that are wondering about starting or don't know where to start. It's the idea, start with the idea. Let me get back to this. I got some mumbity-badoo. LOL, I support that message. Let me go back. Okay, the jinx. I got it. So LOL, Mark, and then I support that. Too funny. I support that message. Thanks, James. I feel the need to get me a church bore big build on the bench. My idea, but I'll have starting with fancy detail first. The big bore building church or big building on the bench. Yeah, I like the kits and stuff like that. You can totally buy it. And I guess also if you haven't done something like that, don't go in with an expectation that you're just going to slay it, and I'm going to do all these things. I like to look at it when I'm looking at the door, it's the size of a door. Does that make sense? When I'm looking at this little thing that I'm painting, it's the size of a door, and I'm trying to get all those details. So just take your time on it. I think that works great. Martin, thanks, Bill, also for showing my model. I'm honored. And if anyone plans to visit Scale Model Channel, I hope to see you there. Cheers from Holland. Awesome. Challenge, I think is what he's saying, is Scale Model Challenge, because Scale Model Challenge is coming up in 2 weeks or something like that. It's very, very close. And a lot of people are going to that. So it's going to be very, very cool. Back, had to step away for like 10 minutes. We should have power back soon. Oh no, I hope you guys don't lose power long. That is no fun, Aaron. We are of those people. We lose our power quite a bit in the wintertime. And I'm thinking this winter is going to be a fun one. So we'll see how that goes. Well, folks, thank you so much for today. I really had a great time. I do want to say thank you to some other folks, and those folks happen to be my my patrons, because they're just the sweetest, nicest folks you ever wanted to meet, and so I want to say hi to them. And that's not it. That is. So, pardon me. I got a new gentleman on here just a couple of weeks ago, Stephen Kessel, a YouTube member, because I have members on the YouTube channel too. And on my Patreon channel, I have a bunch of folks, and I just want to say thank you, everybody. These folks are great. They pay for the content on Patreon, and they also contribute. A lot of that contribution, I listen to, or not listen to, but I respond to all my comments. But I also get other comments on my Patreon as well on other projects and stuff I'm working on. And I really value that. I really appreciate that. It is something that a lone modeler for 30 plus years, because that's what I did. I just in the shop here by myself. It's a little bit different getting used to having all these people involved in these projects, but I really thoroughly enjoy it. It's really fun. It is. And if you've ever worried about that, because, this is a kind of a very personal activity. you are in here building and it's dark and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're painting and there's nobody around and there's some really bad television movies on and you're painting. And then all of a sudden you find that there are other people that do the same thing and they enjoy this and they want to talk to you about it. And they've experienced some of the things that you have. That's a pretty neat thing. That's a pretty awesome thing because, you think that you build these things for yourself, but you turns out that other people are building them for themselves too. And you can share in that experience. That's pretty special. So anyway, I'm just blathering now. I don't know if I'm trying to make it longer or what, but we're done. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for watching for so long. It's like 2 hours. So I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I am going to be doing some modeling, as you might guess, and I hope you get a chance to. So thanks very much, everybody. Home Front Forge, I see you there. There it is. Thanks, Bill. And looked at that ghost clock. Wow. Isn't that cool? So thanks very much, folks. Have a wonderful day, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks very much, James, for coming in. That's wonderful.